Indian classical music is traditional, rich, beautiful, intense, and yet relaxing and meditative. You and I are living a typical 21st century life with gadgets and information overload. How are we going to connect these two worlds? Or is it even possible? Or does it even make sense? Let us face some hard questions together. Can you imagine starting your Indian classical music journey without joining a vocal or instrument class? Do you think you can start Indian classical music exploration without musical talents? Do you think it is easy to get started with Indian classical music along with daily responsibilities of your busy lives? Can you imagine working professionals benefiting from Indian classical music? Do you think it is easy to groom Indian classical music lovers within your family in today's times? Is it easy to find safe spaces around you to emote, express, and simply bond over Indian classical music? Are you able to sit through or appreciate long Indian classical music concerts without getting bored? Do you even see the need to? Are your children supported enough on a regular basis to enjoy Indian classical music? Can you imagine a common man equipped enough to study or research on Indian classical music without being a music student? Can you imagine a wholesome Indian classical music exploration experience in the digital space? Can you imagine learning Indian classical music for any other reason outside of stage performances? Have you imagined the power of Indian classical music to heal our communities in today's uncertain times? Have you experienced the emotional and intellectual appeal of Indian classical music to connect with yourselves and others? Have you thought of long-term benefits of Indian classical music to de-stress and tackle anxiety? There are so many more questions we have in our minds. The not so surprising answers to all the questions is no. We tell you it is possible with love, with consistency, with technology. It is possible at Shrota House. We are here to connect beautiful worlds and let the magic of Indian classical music blossom in every home. Subscribe to Concert Express, a classical journey where you regularly listen to Indian classical music and just open up and express while seamlessly learning about the art forms. Concert Express by Shrota House is a program which is regular, relaxing, rejuvenating, for we believe that listening is the beginning of learning. Shrota House takes each of you to the beautiful world of Indian classical music. And we hope to see you at Concert Express, a classical journey. Thank you.
Namaskaram, everybody. A very warm welcome to this panel discussion that is being conducted by ShrotaHouse. It gives me great pleasure to do this on behalf of Vanitha Bhaskar, who is the founder of ShrotaHouse. I've been associated with ShrotaHouse since their inception, and I've been on their advisory, and I've participated in a lot of activities that they have been doing. And it's an absolute pleasure to have all of you here today. I'll start off with a few lines of introduction for each of you. Dr. Radha Bhaskar, a very, very unique person who has multiple dimensions to her personality. Musician, musicologist, a guru, journalist, cultural organizer. She plays a huge role in the having founded Mudra, which is a 25-year-old cultural organization that's been doing phenomenal work in bringing artists and lecture demonstrations, and I've personally benefited by attending several of them during the season and other times as well. She also has a PhD in the subject of Carnatic music concerts, so who better to be in this panel discussion today? So welcome, Dr. Radha Bhaskar.
Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Vidushi Prithi Narasimhan, who is a Carnatic vocalist, guru. She also has her expertise in cybersecurity. So she's a very interesting combination of interests in music and other professional interests. She is an assistant professor at the University of Texas, Dallas. And she also is the parent of a very musically gifted child called Shruti. She's a disciple of the Karnataka brothers. And it's very nice to have people who have these different facets to themselves. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Srimati Jayasri Sundara Raghavan, who is on the board of Sri Ranga Ramanuja Mahadesikan Fine Arts and Krishna Geetam Performing Arts. She is also an avid connoisseur of Carnatic music, as you can imagine, having conducted several programs through their organization. She's also the mother of two very talented children. Her older daughter is a phenomenal Bharatanatyam artist, and her younger son is a very good vocalist. He is also the disciple of Sri Sandeep Narayan. So I know all of you on a personal level as well, and it's such a pleasure to have all of you here in this panel discussion. Without further ado, we'll get started. The topic for this panel discussion is building the next generation of Rasikas in Carnatic music. Now, there are several aspects to this, as you can imagine. Over the last several decades, we've seen what a big role stage performances have had to play in building the next generation Rasikas, or building this whole love for Carnatic music. But with today's technology, and especially since the pandemic, there's been a surge of programs online, free accessibility to Carnatic music, and very low attention spans. It's a very interesting combination. So I'd like to leave the panel open for all of you to chime in, and I will just interject as required. So please feel free to get started. I know Dr. Radha Bhaskar has been working on a very beautiful series called CM365. So if I can suggest, why don't you start off with your thoughts, Dr. Radha Bhaskar? It'll be lovely if the three of you have a interactive discussion, and I'd like to chime in as appropriate. The floor is yours now.
Okay. First of all, thank you for inviting me today here. As Vanitha ji put, in fact, musicians, Rasikas, everybody are in a totally different dimension now post-pandemic, actually. Because the main problem, I won't say it's a problem, the change, the shift of the kind of the quality of Rasikas, the quantity of Rasikas, everything has changed totally for that matter. Now, since I'm also on the musician end as well as a Rasika in terms of watching, or as an organizer, all the Rasikas come. So, I'm able to think on the same subject from different dimensions because of this. So as an artist, for me, when I was doing concerts, the pre-pandemic time, when you think, if I'm going to sing in Mylapore, I know what kind of audience is going to come for me. So I will prepare myself there because I know it's going to be a very learned audience, or a T Nagar Krishna Gana Sabha. If it's going to be a distance Naganallur concert, it will be different. If it's going to be outside Chennai, it's going to be different. So every artist knows that how to prepare themselves according to the localized kind of audience. But today, post-pandemic, what has happened is that the global kind of audience, in fact, honestly, it has left the musician very confused, because there are so many levels of audience in the whole process here. You cannot gauge the audience. There may be, as she was saying about her, Madhumita was telling 0 level to 1. So here it's from 0 to 100 actually, where even musicians are listening, because earlier, you know, that when some musicians sang, obviously the other musicians would not come and sit and listen like that, you know, as a huge number. Maybe 1 or 2 on an invitation, we would go as a mark of courtesy to listen. But now that it's thrown online, I will be probably listened to by an absolute layman. I'll be probably listened to one of the greatest scholars. I'll be listened to by one of the greatest musicians as well, because for everybody now it's accessible. So this is a very, very big challenge today as to how to, you know, tailor your concert itself as to cater to different strata of people is the biggest challenge. And I'm sure, like me, many musicians are confused on that level, because trying to satisfy everybody is a Herculean task, and it's an impossible task also. In fact, when I do a demonstration, you know, for an ordinary Rasika, for example, at that time, you know, other scholar will say, in fact, one person told me also by mistake, now you mentioned about my CM65, I sent to somebody, they said, well, I know all this, why do you keep sending it to me? So you can understand. So, I mean, that may be a matter of ego, that's a different thing. So for me, it's a big challenge as to, or if I'm going to make it very bombastic language and very, you know, high level, I may not be able to reach the kind of ordinary Rasika that we are thinking of. So now today, the whole challenge is about, at a global level, how to take Carnatic music across in an interesting manner, in an arresting manner. That is also very important, because now more younger generation people have come into the whole fold because of the technology you are able to have in a mobile, you are able to see everywhere. They don't have to come to the concert. So how to, now the main topic, as Madhumita was also mentioning, how to bring in all the youngsters into the fold of music by making it more interesting and engaging is the question. I'll throw it open for the others, then I'll come back to saying what kind of solutions we could probably offer for this.
Yeah, I think it was a very great thought that you brought out here, Radhaji. I think rightly, as you pointed out, there are too many. The other consequence of doing this online is everybody has started a page now. And there are too many things going on simultaneously. And I do feel that good quality concerts are not getting the visibility and the right kind of audience, because the audience are now like, they have multiple things to choose from. And the audience are getting split between multiple programs conflicting with the same time frame. And the second consequence of this is, yes, we do have the opportunity to go back and listen to it, but not many are taking that effort to actually go and listen to great programs or great content. So I feel that the content is also getting diluted in one sense. And the second consequence to this is, sometimes we do see people who are premature being thrown into a concert platform, and that kind of gives a very false sense of accomplishment to all of us. That includes everybody. And then, you know, as a teacher myself, the challenge that I face is, oh, I have performed here, so now I want to perform elsewhere. The student may actually not be ready. So these are all like some things that I wanted to add on top of what you said. So the content dilution, the false sense of accomplishment. While on the positive, yes, it's a huge motivation factor for some of us to actually take it as an opportunity and, you know, build our repertoire and build our strengths, looking forward to something. So a milestone-based learning is actually something that can be a great consequence of this platform, barring all the other side effects that I just mentioned.
Jayasri, you want to chime in?
So this is really very interesting topic. In fact, I would like to add a few pointers as a Rasika and as a parent mainly, and also a few challenges as an organizer in this topic. Yes, rightly said, Radhaji, and what Preeti mentioned. It is a humongous task because there are multiple channels, multiple YouTube links, multiple, even on WhatsApp that's been forwarded to us. Even just to take a glimpse, it takes so much time, and as rightly said by Preeti, it does get diluted, but unless you don't listen to the first glimpse, you're not going to get a full sense of thing. That's one thing. And as an organizer, we've always seen that yes, when you listen to the first song, it's like they say a saying, ஒரு சோறு is good enough for the ஒரு பானை சோறு ஒரு padam, the padam of it, right? So it's that one thing. Okay, I think I should listen to this, makes it more interesting. But it is a challenge, and multiple when you listen to it is a big task on the Rasika or as a parent. But if we do not set a milestone, where are we leading? See, in nowadays, children are, especially students in America, are exposed to multiple genres of music too, and where they practicing every day and getting to that level takes a certain stage and momentum. And when you do it every day, it becomes a routine and things. I totally agree with it. But the point is, these concerts are stepping stones. Okay, one concert I've done like this. Okay, I'm going to do better in this. But unless we don't do those milestones, like this is a concert. Okay, that's how you gear your practice also towards it. Okay, start practicing that list for a month or two and get yourself, okay, because when you're introduced to multiple things, keeping a 4.0 GPA in your studies and everything, everywhere around the world, especially students of, when you're students in high school and college and everything, it becomes challenging. But so unless you don't have a performance stage somewhere, working on it with multiple things in their plate becomes challenging. So it's a boon and a bane, but again, it's each individual how they foresee it and how they want to take it forward, right, in their music journey.
Yes, so we have two distinct set of people who are performing, right? We have the seasoned artists, right. We have the amateurs, right? When I say amateurs, I also mean the student aspiring musicians who are trying to get there to the top. So I completely agree with you. Students, amateurs, everybody, they need those concert opportunities, whether it's online or in an actual sabha. And then we have the seasoned musicians who continue to perform. Of course, there's been a lull during the pandemic, and people have resorted to different ways of bringing out their music through social media. Because as an artist, you don't do this primarily just for money, right? It is not just a profession. It's a way of life. Music is something that is so inherently close to you that it's just impossible to not do it, but regardless of what the situation is, right? So people have found very creative means of expressing themselves artistically on social media, which is wonderful, because otherwise the audiences would have been deprived of good music for the past few years. So we have these two distinct set of people. But what has happened though is that clearly attention span has come down. Like we rightly pointed out, all of us have said this, right? I mean, there is like one concert happening, say in one page, in page X, there's another concert happening in page Y. I don't want to give names because there are so many different platforms out there on social media. So we just go listen to the Alapana in one, we go listen to the Swarams in another, and then we listen to the male Kala Neraval in one. So it's like you're just hopping from one thing to another like a monkey, pretty much, right? So how can we in a very conscious way develop this new generation of Rasikas? What is it that we need to do differently is what I'm thinking. What can we do differently as musicians, as gurus? What can we teach our students better to do? What can we do as parents? What can we tell our children to do better so that they're not in this attention deficit set of Rasikas? of today, right?
So one thing that strike me, if it's okay, one thing that strike me when for listening, right? Shravanam has been a very integral part of all forms, right? It's a form of bhakti. Shravanam, Kirtanam. This is one of the two forms, lakshanas of bhakti, as Prahlada says. So Shravanam, when it comes to Shravanam, the main aspect is, as you say, there are multiple things. There are three people involved in this: the gurus, the disciples, and the parents, right? So I still recall one of my earlier days. One of the teachers of my daughter, she used to have something called the kids are introduced to Excel and everything online these days at much earlier age, right? So she will say every day 10-minute listening she wants. So it's, I think, inculcating a regular listening pattern to the child as a parent is the first thing. And as a guru, I come to that next. When the teacher says, okay, I want to see a 10-minute learning, and record it in writing. For instance, today I want you to listen to this artist for 10 minutes. It can be any song. Okay. So the first is making a routine for the parent to sit down with the child and make them listen. So charity begins at home, same thing. With practice, the parent also has to sit down with the child. I'm talking about even toddler, 3-4-year-old. The toddler can be doing another activity, but listening, right? At 3 and 4, obviously they're going to run. But since there's the ShrotaHouse initiates more on from toddler to right to all ages. So the initial practice is like making them sit to listen is itself something that needs to be inculcated at a very early age, right? Every day, that 10-minute. So where the parent forms this, the child is not aware of that. So this exercise of one of the teacher, what she used to do is 10-minute, please make a note. The parent has to type in what was listened. Then that is sent to the teacher. Then the guru's part is when the child comes to the class, he or she can discuss with them the first 10 minutes. Okay, what did you listen this week? What was that was different than last time what you listened to? Or what is it similar to what it was listened to, right? Similarity and differentiation can be talked to, because at 3 and 4, the child says, oh, I learned to listen to this raga. This was more similar to the one what I listened to, something different. Or I thought this meant that song too, where it is like a combination of raga or something. So that when the parent does their part, the teacher does their part of talking to them on a discussion. Initially, in the first 5 to 10 minutes of the class, where their attention span is really very high, right? 5 to 10 minutes. What is your takeaway from this? What is your takeaway? What did you listen to? What did you like? They can just say, oh, I just like the tune, or just I like the rhythm. It can be anything, the answer can be. But that is what is going to initiate at the first level, I feel.
Very, very nice, Jayasri. I can tell you a little bit about what I've done with my students in the past. So I perform. I have a full-time professional career also in information technology, and I run a couple of non-profits, and I teach music. And with my students, whenever I have had a concert, I've had my students and my children sit in front of the audience, have a book and a pen, and they have to note down their observations. Now, some of the kids who are just starting out, let's say they're in the Geetam level, they might not necessarily know all the different ragas that are there. But I tell them this, all you have to do is identify what notes you heard in that composition. You don't have to recognize the raga. It's just a name, right? But can you tell me, did the raga have a Shuddha Rishabham? Did it have an Antara Gandharam? Those kind of notes. So I would typically go check. So in the concerts that we used to have, all my students would be sitting up front with a book and a pen. And they would be making all these notes for every piece that's performed. And I would also tell the artists not to announce the raga until they perform the piece. Because I would say that it gives the students an opportunity to guess the raga. Because some of them will genuinely know the raga too. And of all the students I've had, I found that the students who listen a lot have made the most progress. It's not just about classroom learning. My guru, Sangeet Samrat Shri Chitravinayan Ravikiran, sir, he says this very often, that tuition is only a small part of learning. Most of it is intuition, is what he says. And it's a very beautiful way to say it. And that intuition you can only develop if you listen a lot, right? So that listening, that Shravanam, is absolutely key to not just becoming a good performer, but also becoming a good Rasika and becoming a good human being overall. Just imagine this, the ideas of what we learn in Carnatic music spills over to every aspect of life, right? When you talk to your friend, you can't just keep talking all the time. You have to listen. So that aspect of listening with rapt attention is something that one has to develop even while building relationships. So it goes past just music.
Adding to what you said, I mean, that's what precisely I was also thinking in the mind. Even the way we have learned music to now how it is shifted, you can see a radical difference in the sense that when I learned from my guru, for example, he would teach, I would just repeat. That's all. There was no questions asked anywhere. So it was just, you had to absorb everything and then introspect. But today you yourself, all the gurus here in the panel would definitely agree that the children are so analytical and ask so many questions. So you yourself have to be geared up, first thing. Secondly, from my observation as a teacher, I feel that though we as people of the other generation, I mean, all of us obviously are 45, 50 at least, I suppose. So for us, it was more like, the content was something we were taught that it's something very spiritual and traditional and other things. But to carry it forward to the next generation, I strongly believe that we have to make them sense that it is not just about being some old tradition, but rather a very trendy thing also. So trendy in the sense that this can be a science, it can be a math, it can be a logic, it can be a philosophy, it can be creativity. And I, in fact, bring about a lot of examples to show them, just even with Sarli, then all of you must be doing the same thing, like how you can create mathematical patterns with this, how scientifically you can analyze this. So many things, you try to bring out some things which they are able to relate to. That is very important, because earlier, if you say that, in fact, people abroad, I find that the children I'm teaching abroad also. So for them to connect to the mythology of Shiva or mythology of Vishnu and other things, I'm sure it's here itself, it's very difficult because of the fact that they are not able to relate. So how can we change or how can we evolve the system such that they're able to relate to it effectively is a very challenging thing. And I think every teacher, if we try to work out that aspect as much as listening, the teaching process also, how to make it much, much interesting. In fact, she was telling about the Shravanam. I was just thinking, in fact, in one of the episodes also I mentioned, it's a very relevant thing actually. That's why I want to share it again. Where, the visual medium has become so strong and powerful today. We cannot deny that at all. In our time, in fact, I was just thinking the other day, for example, Tanjavur Kalyan Ramana, TMT, I'm just making a mention. Some people may not even be aware of those people. For me and all, I have not seen all these people, but that the music is something which is filling my ear. But today it is like, first you are attracted only by the visual. Only if the visual is impressive, then you go to listen to the content itself. It's a very sad state where music is supposed to be an oral medium, but it has become a very strong visual medium, and we cannot deny it, nor can we do anything about it. No, that's how it is. But the point is that how to bring the younger generation into it. In fact, I was mentioning also about one of the clipping which went viral, I was very amused with that Rangapura Vihara that Harish Ramakrishnan has sung, with all the sitting with in a trendy position, with all the jeans and everything, so with the keyboard and drums and other things. For me, the ultimate Rangapura Vihara is MS Subbulakshmi's sublime rendition. But the students today are able to only connect to this Rangapura Vihara that he is singing. And in fact, one student was pestering me and telling me, you have to teach me this song. I said, it's not that easy to learn it. The way you're listening it, it's not that easy because it's such a intricate song. What I want to drive home the point is that now the visual media through that, we have to make it as much more arresting to the younger generation. One more point is, of course, the coming in of lot of younger children into the fold of music is a very welcome change. We need not be very pessimistic about many things at all. The brighter side is that in the pandemic time, we have seen that so many children have really shown so much of interest in learning the art. So as teachers, we have to see how to engage them in the system. That is very important. If you try to, bridging that gap and trying to bring them into the fold is a very challenging thing. And that's where I think as teachers, every day we have to be very innovative. Before that, it's not just about teaching Sarli Janta, but how to make it, putting old wine in a new bottle or something like however you call it. So you have to really bring it out to them in such a way. If you do that, I'm sure, I have no cribs about the children today who are much more intelligent, and we have to equip ourselves. That's very important. You cannot tell the child today, just shut up, don't ask me questions. So whatever question the child asks before that, you have to be much more knowledgeable. That's also very important. You can't just learn a few set of songs like you did earlier and just teach them. You have to be an all-rounder, in fact, to sustain yourself as a teacher. These are my points I wanted to share here now.
Very well.
And I would like to add one more thing on top of what we just said. Usually, so in order to facilitate this learning, I send them like a bi-weekly learning video. So what I do is I send them like a concert recording of like a exterior master and a current generation artist, so they can, and then I ask them to listen to that. But again, the attention span is a very difficult thing. You send them like a 3 hour or 2 hour long concert, they're going to find it difficult to listen to. So I pick a raga and then I ask them to listen to a couple of kritis presented by different artists in that raga over a period of 2 weeks. And that seems to kind of make things a little easier on them. So if I tell them sit and listen to a concert for 1 hour a week, that seems to be a Herculean task for them. So, but if I tell them in that week, you listen to like a 10-minute recording of a song or a kriti that you're in the same raga that you're learning now, that seems to work a little better. And, and also like Radhaji just said, kids are attracted towards fusion music these days. So I asked them to also like think and introspect and see if they find it relatable to a song that they have heard in another stream of music. Like it could be Western, or, sometimes they play it on a keyboard and they send it to me. They do other things also. So that kind of keeps them motivated, and they're able to relate to something that they are used to learning through their school curriculum or other things.
That's a wonderful thing, in fact, really wonderful. The same thing which Vanitha ji was saying, like guided teaching, but I also feel, are they able to do it on their own? I don't know how effectively they can do. Or a guided kind of listening is like that. Guided listening is very important, like guided teaching, where you can show them the path as to how to listen, because listening can be done at various levels. You can just listen at a peripheral level, at an intense level. So for that, I think a lot of guidance is also required. Probably as teachers, we could organize even, once a month, a guided listening session as to show them how to listen to music. That's a very big art, as much as learning to sing. That's what I feel. So
that probably could be your next learning series, Radhaji. I will be happy to sign up for it.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing. Guided listening is also very important in current scenario, where the kids are handheld to initially be introduced to what is right for them at that stage of time, and at each stage. So the teachers play a very important role in, okay, I want you to listen to this and come to me. So that makes it more easier for them as to a lot of things thrown at them, right?
So it just boils down to the fact that one fine morning, nothing can happen. This is a very slow, steady, and long process which children have to undergo very patiently. And otherwise, it doesn't happen. Either the listening or the learning.
Yes, Shravanam is a yagnam, right? Shravana yagnam, they say it's a journey with your life. So I think it makes more sense with every aspect what has to be done at different stages.
I suppose we also had the luxury of that space and time in our generation, which they don't have now. So in fact, I remember that one person telling video paatela, they'll say talli talli paate. So talli talli, I can't sing talli talli, but they can see talli talli. So that's how it is today. Everybody is doing that. And just to satisfy somebody, on the Facebook or a social media that they have seen it, they just, push through and just see something and say your Shankarabharanam was great or your Kalyani was great, and they give a comment. but that is not listening. We have to understand that listening is a totally, it's a meditative process that we have to inculcate with us or with the children. I think Vanitha ji, can you share something on this? This is a very challenging aspect, actually.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, add to that as from our generation, we were extremely lucky. We had no distraction of Snapchat or TikTok or Instagram or Facebook. And I remember as a child, I learned by repetition. Now, that is one thing that we need to inculcate with children that are very young. You can't give them one recording on one day, a different recording the next day. They will not learn from that at all. What really helps is listening to even one kriti, a really solid kriti by one of our great masters from the past, listening to that over and over and over again for a period of time. I remember long car rides with my parents. My father would just only turn on Carnatic music. Neither of them were musicians, right? But they ingrained Carnatic music into me from a very, very young age. And that was only by repetitive listening. And I think that repetitive listening is what is also missing in many cases. We need to inculcate the art of listening to something over and over again and not getting bored with it. There is a tendency to want to, for example, if I ask my son to practice something or my student to practice something 100 times, they lose enthusiasm after a while. But how can you approach it with a fresh perspective every time you practice it or listen to it is what is key. Now, what we've talked about is getting kids who are already into Carnatic music learn to love Carnatic music, which is a slightly easier problem. Now, let's go to the other aspect of drawing Rasikas who have absolutely no idea of Carnatic music into this. And I can share my experience here in the US. When I go to a school or to a university to give a little lecture demonstration on a bird's eye view of Carnatic music, I can tell you how I introduce it to them. So I start singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. It's something that most people can connect with. So I sing it in swarams, right? And then I just change one note and I tell them how that changing that one swaram can have an impact on the mood of the entire composition. So Twinkle, Twinkle ends up being a very sad Twinkle, Twinkle from being a happy one, right? And that gives them a perspective of how you can actually influence the mood of a particular scenario with music, right? Which is what even music directors play upon, right? Even in movies, when there's a sinister scene, they bring in, minor notes, right? More Nata Bhairavi or that kind of a feel. But how do we do that? How do we do that as musicians, as organizers, as gurus ourselves? How can we draw more audiences to come and listen to Carnatic music, which is a very big subject by itself? I'm not sure we can do justice to that within this given time frame, but I would like your thoughts to begin with, Dr. Radha Bhaskar. You've been running Mudra along with your husband for 25 years now. You've seen audiences. What percentage of your audiences are repeat audiences? And what percentage of them are new? Do you have any stats on that? I'd be curious to find it. And of course, we're talking about Chennai, where people know what Carnatic music is. Now, that's a completely different ballgame. In the US, I have to run through hoops to get people to come and attend. I cook dinner for them on a weekday evening. Okay, I give them, sometimes I have to invite them to a concert where they don't have to pay anything. They just come, listen. For me, it is all about the joy of spreading the music of those artists there and making sure that they don't have to worry about anything on a weekday, right? On a Thursday evening or a Friday evening, if you have to go back and think about making dinner, that's a headache. That is going to be the first deterrent. So I make sure that dinner is also ready for them. I tell them, I have all this for you. Please come and attend, right? Now, it's not something we do in Chennai, right? What are your thoughts on this?
First of all, I salute you for your painstaking efforts, because the kind of juggling you're doing with multiple things, I'm really odd at times. Nevertheless, the point about bringing new children into the fold of music, the first thing, because I've also worked pre-pandemic, I was doing a lot of free workshop for children of government schools where, there were no exposure. They don't even know what music is, leave alone what is Carnatic music. And even Ramakrishna Mission School and other things, I was doing free workshops for them. So from that, what was my experience is that, as you said, they don't know anything about music. So at that point, what is the whole idea is to bring them first to sing something. So we used to bring in small bhajans, namavalis and all these things, very, very easy ones. And that, gave them the kind of a power and strength and, faith that they could also sing. That joy that they were able to, it was many times for the first few weeks, it was all apaswaram in the sense of my mind, how my mind is tuned. But then that joy of singing together is something, absolutely cannot be explained in words. And also the children, for the first time they're singing. These are all things a Carnatic musician will never be able to understand, because we are all so much surrounded by music. So for me, that was a different kind of an experience where, first time they're getting exposed to music, like, you're opening a Pandora box for them, it was like that for them. So they were all like, all singing joyously. For them, it was, there was no inhibition in the mind that whether they're singing to the Shruti or whether they're singing to a Swaram. It was only all about singing. So after that, what we tried to do is, like in our concerts itself, when the youngsters were singing, we tried to invite the schools itself, motivate the schools to come and sit there for some time. We used to have this Bhajan Mela, Yuva Sankirtan and all these programs. So if I'm going to bring them to a super T.N. Sheshagopalan concert, for example, and make them sit, there won't be a connect, obviously. So I will try to kind of find out concerts where they will be able to connect. So that kind of concerts we would organize and bring all the children. They used to come by a bus, they used to come and sit and listen. So whether they are able to understand or not, at least the system they are able to sense. What is the whole system of music? How does it really look visually? Even how to, they wouldn't have even seen how a Carnatic concert looks. You just imagine, that's the kind of people I'm talking about, children I'm talking. But on a sustained, continuous level, if we could keep on doing that, I'm sure that we can bring children into the fold of music. It's, I think the fault lies with us only in not being able to go to them and approach them. In fact, I still remember with emotion, when first time after the class was over, the workshop, I was thinking I'm a star, because, all the children surrounded and asked, Miss, when are you going to come back again? When are you going to come back again? That was an emotional moment for me when I felt that my job, yes, I have done it great. So it is not about just teaching those who are already initiated, but as you said, bringing in children into the fold of music. But now again, with technology coming in, how the shift has happened is another big challenge now, because the live concerts, we are not able to do. Live workshops, it's a different difficult task now. So I suppose we have also now to find out methods to sustain the interest. But this is what I'm talking about earlier, where I think we have to go down to that level. That is also important. We can't remain in a pedestal and expect everybody to come into the fold of Carnatic music. We have to go down to that level, trying to bring them into our fold and then slowly raise their level. That is how it works. So that's a big challenge. It's not very easy, but I was doing that for some time. Then the pandemic came and everything has got... that schools themselves are closed. So after that, we couldn't do anything. So this was just a suggestion I wanted to throw open to you.
Very, very nice. You're doing a great work with Mudra. I've been floored by the lecture demonstrations, the discussions and the concerts you've been doing. And I know both Prithi and Jayasri, you've been very actively involved in the organizing scene too in the US. I know, Prithi, you've single-handedly managed the Indus Fest in Dallas for several years now, and you're planning on things pretty much every year. You have something or the other. And Jayasri, you've been working, on getting a lot of young talent in SR Fine Arts and Krishna Geetam Performing Arts. And I know during the pandemic, you had this very good initiative called Prarthana, where you had like a ton of people all over the world perform for SR Fine Arts online. And you continue to have your online concerts. What can we collectively, I'd like for us to go off with some key takeaway on what we could do personally. Like Jayasri said, charity begins at home. We could start somewhere and say, how can we build new generation Rasikas? Now, to give you an example, we conducted the Vijaya Navaratri Arts Festival last year through Sai Art Services, that Prithi also is on the board of. And what we did was, we wanted people to watch from start to end. Not just, we don't want people to just buy tickets and not watch them, right? So at the end of every concert, we had a quiz for them. And if they answered that quiz, and that quiz was all based on the pieces in that concert, if they answered those questions and submitted it, there was a lucky draw for a Kanjivaram saree. So that's what we did, because we want to increase engagement. See, I write a lot of grants here to bring in funds for some of these concerts. And one of the key questions they ask is, how do you engage with your audience? How do you know that the concerts are being well received? Now, that's something we can put a lot of thought into. And even online concerts, if we can start having some pop-up quizzes and maybe some small incentives for people to begin with. I mean, I don't mean to say you have to hand out a Kanjivaram sari every time, but if we can do something to that effect, and teachers can actually tell the children, listen to this concert. Gone are those times where you can just say, listen, no matter what, right? I don't think children are in that position anymore, unfortunately. As much as we'd like to believe they're like us, they're not like us. So if we could hand out something very different, some kind of something that makes them, that gives them gratification when they listen to the concert from start to end. I think that's something we could potentially think about doing. Any thoughts on that?
That's a wonderful idea, actually, because unless you're motivating somebody, they will not do anything. So that's how it works today. So I think this is a very good suggestion. But as a teacher, I also wanted to throw open to you one subject of how, just to provide opportunity to everybody, we are at every level, we are just promoting all the children. Is this really good for the growth of music? Because I mean, this is a very weird thing, but you think about it from the Chennai scenario. If you look at Music Academy, to perform at the 12 o'clock slot was a challenging task. The next thing was 1:30, 2:30 or 3:30, then finally coming to the last slot. So that whole thing made you really work and work and work. Now the online media, the topmost artist also performs in the same slot. The youngest one also is performing on the same slot. There's no time slot difference or anything now happening now. So the motivation, even in terms of that I have to do better to reach that particular thing, that has got totally lost now. So you can perform, I can perform, a small child can perform, the biggest artist can perform, all on the same dais as far as the social media is concerned. So how do we keep track of the quality is also another, as much as listening, as even in the presentation of the children, with the pressure that is coming from parents. I don't know how you all face it, that the moment you start teaching, when the child is going to perform. This is a big challenge I'm sure all the teachers are facing. And unless you keep that going, the child will lose interest and leave the, unless of course like Vanitha, who can provide a great atmosphere at home. I'm talking about the other children who do not have any kind of atmosphere at home. For them, for us to engage as teachers and keep them in the fold, how do you do it? It's another thing I just want you to.
I think what really helps is we don't have to put students in platforms outside all the time. You can have an in-house recital. Now, that's one thing I really appreciate, about what Western music teachers you do. So if you're going to a piano class, they have a recital for just their students and parents. Even if they're playing the most simplest Mary Had a Little Lamb, they'll still be going and performing there on stage, right? But that is a very limited audience. Not the whole world is not watching. It's very, very similar to how you do it in product development, right? Because you start off with a minimum viable product and then you take it to the advanced stages where you release a product. You have to release it to a limited audience first, right? Similarly, I think of even students as products at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, your stakeholders are your audiences. They're the ones who are really going to care about the product that comes out. So how do we do that in slow stages? You can have a recital at home. I do these in-home recitals where I invite all my students to come and perform.
Great.
So
and then I have kids. Everyone else joining in on Zoom. So they get the exposure of performing solo. At the same time, they're not being exposed to the harsh world where people can critique them very quickly and they can get demotivated.
I think that's a very good point. I'll also take
Yes, it is a good point. So something which has worked over years in the chamber concerts or house concert setup thing has worked really well here in the US, to be precise. I don't know much about Chennai scenario where a lot of home concerts happen, but in the US, for instance, a Ramanavami or a Krishna Jayanti or something, right? So where you can sign up and each child can come and perform a 5-minute song on a Tyagaraja or whatever, and each of them join together for 2 hours, where we also have then finish that and we have a Nama Sankirtanam kind of a thing, like singing praise and doing things. And for Krishna Jayanti, similarly, 5 minute, 10 minute, each child comes and presents. Like the chamber concert thing has worked really well with the because some kids are very stage shy, so to bring them out, 5 minutes you start performing, 10 minutes you start performing, you get the taste of the stage, right? Not in a big levels, but the home environment has worked very well in the US to start off with, and then go into next levels of presenting 2 kritis at a time or 3 kritis at a time, then going into half-hour slot, going into 1 hour slots. So to initiate, in fact, in our Sabha, the 1 hour slot, we just say the child's aim should be to sing on Shruti. That is the only criteria. Because when we say Shruti Mata, that is the only thing we are looking at, not at the fanciness of the kriti, not at the swarams they create. No, it should be a clean, neat presentation on Shruti. Come sing 5 to 6 kritis in that time slot, whatever is allotted. And that is the only expectation what is done. So I think that gives a leverage for them to taste more of a stage at a little extended time of period. So that is, chamber concerts have been a really very good kickoff for many performers. And we have a few organizations in which we are members. So what happens is you have to attend every month to get a slot to perform next year. So that is one way where, and we have a quiz at the end of the thing to say, for instance, when you, like Vanitha said, so we have a quiz. Okay, a performer, the kid, it's all kids who are performing right from 2nd grader, 3rd grader to a 12th grader. So the span of thing is only that. So the first performance starts with a 5-minute slot. 5-minute slot, you just present a varnam, clean varnam, that is all is expected, no speeds, nothing. You sing on Shruti with a 5-minute. Then the child can ask, okay, any guesses on what the ragam and the talam I did, or who's the composer of it? So that when the children start answering, that means they are indulging in it, they have listened to it, or they go back recalling, oh, is it Koteshwaraya, is it this, is it that, right? So the composer knowledge also gets improved. So this is one form of thing that we have done. And the last slot is that RTP slot, what the thing is, right? Like in these chamber concerts, we have worked on a few of the things. And in other things, what we have done is like Composers Day we have done, right? For instance, so they come and present each composer, each school is given a composer, Arunachala Kavirayar, Tyagaraja, Dikshitar, Koteshwaraya, so many. So each school comes and presents. And when each school comes and presents, the repertoire goes high on that composer. So that is another one thing which we have seen. And for instance, on Ramanami, you present a lot on Rama. Obviously, we send a sign-up sheet where we say, please do not repeat kritis. So that means the children get to learn more newer kritis. And if it's already signed up, please do not sign the same raga. We request same raga and same kriti, do not sign up. So the teachers are pushed to teach newer kritis and impart newer things to the children, where they can come and perform that and say, hey, no one else performed this. Our school did this kind of a thing. So these are small things which we try to inculcate in our organizations. So, and which has worked pretty well until now.
That's a very good thought. I know there's a lot of organizations in the Bay Area and many other places where you have the opportunity of performing in stages, which is great. Preeti, do you have any thoughts on this from the Dallas scene?
Yes, in addition to what we all just shared here, like we have a lot of temples here, and there are like small temple slots, like we call it Nada Seva or Ragarchana. So those are excellent venues for children at all levels to go and present what they know. And the other approach that I personally see that it has worked for me. So I teach students who are predominantly first generation music lovers. They have no exposure in the family. And there are a handful of them who have exposure and they are doing well. So the real challenge is actually trying to kindle that interest in the first generation music lovers. So for them, in fact, I have like a milestone based approach to learning. So for example, for my Varnam level students, I know they may not be ready to learn a Saptaratnakriti or a Pancharatnakriti, but I push them saying, this is what we're going to do. This year, by the end of this year, we want to present this somewhere. And I want you to do the invocation for that festival. And we should do that invocation with this Pancharatnakriti. So even though the children are not ready to learn an item of that complexity or magnitude, they take that up as a challenge. And then, I solicit the listening assignments that I give. They are also for the parents. I tell the whole family to sit together and listen to it, not just the child. So, I have like a log where they have to mark that they have listened to that item. The parents have to go and mark. So it's not like an individual exercise, it's a collective exercise. So that is one aspect. And the second thing is a milestone-based learning. So we took up Saptaratnakriti a couple of years ago. Then we took up a Pancharatnakriti. This year I've taken up Jagadananda Karaka for a set of students. And again, when it is a Geetam level student, I pick up a rare Geetam, a Venkatamaki Geetam is what I've picked up this time in Dharmavati Ragam. So I tell them that there is a new item. This is a rare piece that we have not learned. And this is not something that you can come across, everybody do. And let's pick this up. So with the goal of, keeping that item alive through somebody, like by passing it on to the next gen children, and also by giving them a tangible milestone. We're going to learn this, we're going to perform this here. So we all start, like Jayasri just said, we all start like a big group. And then some of them, they start, it acts like a catalyst. They start getting kindled and they start liking the music and they learn more and they go faster. And then you'll always have students who are at a beginner level who sing in a group of 5 to 10, then eventually they graduate to a group of 5, then they move on to doing like a duo, they sing with another pair to get rid of the stage fear. And then when they go out as a solo performer, then it is actually an organic development. So that's what I try to do in my school.
That's very, very nice. Very beautifully said. That's a good segue though, what you mentioned in terms of first generation listeners. Now we're talking about first generation listeners who are privileged, who already have access to technology, access to money, parents who are supportive. How can we, a very good thought that we can discuss is, again, that's a very long discussion. We're almost at the end of this panel discussion, but how can we develop first generation listeners who are underprivileged and underserved? Right? So that's a very different topic altogether. Like I know, for example, my guru has done a lot of work in taking music to rural populations. Many years ago, he did this whole like a rural music camp where scores of children were taught Carnatic music. He composed some pieces specifically for them in Tamil that would be easy for them to relate to. I know several other musicians have done work like this too. In corporation schools, we have music teachers, right? In Tamil Nadu. I don't know about the other states. Unfortunately, I don't have much exposure to that. But even as privileged people ourselves, what can we do is something that comes to my mind. I mean, small things. I know a lot of musicians have given out scholarships to deserving students of art. We've done that through SciArt services too. I'm not saying we're the first. We certainly have been inspired by many other musicians and organizers have done that. And we also started a scholarship scheme last year to award a scholarship to deserving students who are from underprivileged kids. And we ensured that we pick kids from different parts, not just from Chennai, from Salem, from Coimbatore, different areas where Carnatic music is not as mainstream as it is in Chennai, for example. But how can we do this for completely untrained years and underserved and underprivileged years is a thought that we can all go back with, because at the end of the day, music can be very, very therapeutic even for kids. I mean, I know that at the end of the day, we want to feed them food and not music because that is what they care about, right, at that stage. But what can we do better? Because there is a lot of untapped talent there. Maybe listening to that music will bring out a very good musician out of them, right? So that's another thought. But to summarize what we discussed today, we talked about how can we be how can we make better listeners out of our audiences, right? The digital audience and the in-person audience. How can we inculcate listening as a parent, as a guru? And how can we inculcate listening among our audiences as an organizer? I would say, if I were to summarize all this, it feels like we're all headed in the right direction. We have ideas, but maybe bringing everybody in unison and coming up with a more unified approach to attract audiences as organizers might not be a bad idea at all. I don't know what you think about this from the perspective of just us doing something on our own versus coming together with other organizations to brainstorm on how we can improve the quality of the Rasikasam, because today anybody can go online and write a review, bad or good, right? And it changes the perspective of how people, they actually perceive that musician. How can we, and I've personally read these amazing reviews by Sri NMN many years ago, right? From the Hindu and all that, about the Music Academy concerts. I've read some of those brilliantly written reviews. Now, Dr. Radha Bhaskar, your Samudra magazine is amazing. That's a cut above the rest. But if you look at some of the other reviews that pop out these days, it's very, very disappointing, right? How can we increase the quality everywhere overall? And this is a much bigger discussion, and I think requires organizations coming together to weed out all these bad reviews or weed out social media comments. I mean, you can do anything on social media now, right? So how can we work together is a very important topic. And I think maybe that could be the topic of our next discussion. It was a pleasure having all of you today morning or evening, depending on your time zone. But thank you so much again for joining the panel discussion, and looking forward to your valuable inputs going forward as well. I'd like to thank Madhumita of ShrotaHouse for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you, Madhumita.